Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men Volume 2, number 51, cover dated April 1996. And this is a pretty interesting and pretty cool cover by Andy Kubert, inked by Cam Smith. And what's so interesting about this one is the perspective. So it looks like Kubert is using a fish-eyed angled perspective on the front of the train here. That is the death train of the caption. And so we're looking up from this particular rail and the lines are curving on the train, on the tracks, all of that. It's really, really interestingly done, and it's something that he's been playing around with for the last 6 months or so in terms of his art, and it looks really, really good. So we've got 3 X-Men featured there: Beast, Bishop, and Gambit all the way up the top. And I also like the way that that kind of pyramid or that triangle of characters, including these monsters, at the top there, we've got Gambit like right over and in front of the X-Men logo. So it really helps sell the perspective on this cover. Let's open this one up to the first page. And this is not Andy Kubert on the interior artwork. Instead, it is a guest artist. And the story opens in Westchester, New York, and the professor has been working to try and get Cerebro up and running since it was destroyed by Banshee when he was up against the Phalanx in the X-Mansion way back in Uncanny X-Men 316. So he gets it running for a moment, and then he is able to trace an register an unprecedented energy spike in northern New Jersey. Given the intensity, says the professor, it's almost certainly a machine malfunction. But Bishop thinks it's better to investigate. Gambit and the Beast are the only others currently in the mansion. So he runs to load them into the Blackbird and investigate that energy spike. So turn the page and we get this really cool double page splash. And it's interesting to get a double page splash spread like this without any major characters in it. Instead, we have the scene of the Blackbird right on top of that train that's making its way towards this tunnel and New York City, as it turns out. So the title of the story is Deathbound Train. The creative team, Mark Waid writer. This is Mark Waid's first issue as a sole writer on the title. He has done some scripting duties over Scott Lobdell plots to this point, but here he is as a plotter and scripter in his own right. Pascual Ferry on pencils. Pascual Ferry still an artist working for Marvel in the present year, 2024. So this is early work of his. John Dell, Mark Morales, and Vince Russell on inks, which means that there might have been a little bit of deadline pressure on this particular issue. Marie Javins on colours and Malibu Hughes on the digital colour separations. Richard Starkings and Comicraft on the digital lettering. I like the little detail of the perhaps homeless guy here with his cat, in particular the cat looking at the scene of the Blackbird hovering over that speeding train. So aboard the Blackbird we have our trio of X-Men. So it means that the Blackbird is on autopilot there, and it must have a fairly advanced autopilot to be able to maintain position over the train like that. But in any case, here we have our trio, and Gambit provides them entrance to the back of the train, where they're met by this mass of monstrous figures. So these are mutated humans, as it will turn out, and let's turn the page and continue and see how do they react to this challenge. So Bishop seems to be the one in the leadership position, which is a little bit strange because Beast, has been an X-Man much longer than Bishop, has a lot of experience, and yet Bishop is taking command, kind of stepping into the role he would have had with the XSE in the future. So no throwing, no hitting, they're not out to hurt us. He says, hard as it is to believe, this is what Cerebro warned of, a train full of ordinary people mutating wildly. So the Beast leaps into action. Interesting, what could cause? So he's always thinking scientifically. At the moment, Bishop says, I don't care, not nearly as much as I'm concerned with saving the remaining humans. Get to it. So Beast sees this human in the corner of one of the carriages, but the woman is absolutely out of her mind with fear, tells him not to touch her in particular, and that makes him curious. Why not? Am I that appalling? Is blue not your colour? Or, oh, my apologies, you overlook my heroic potential, dear girl, he says. Given my physiology, you no doubt have me confused with these marauding mutates. But Gambit gets it. He sees what's going on with them. That's not why she's afraid of skin-to-skin contact. Because when these mutated humans touch another, they change. Flesh-to-flesh activation, says the Beast. This spontaneous mutation, it's contagious. So that's our setup in the opening act of the story. We have everything we need to know about what's going on and the challenge on that particular train, that speeding train. And then we get a little intercut scene with a domestic scene with Cyclops and Phoenix visiting Jean Grey's mother and father here, and her nephew and niece. Those are her sister's children. And Cyclops is playing a game with them of guess which hand the quarter's in. And the father there, the professor, her father, is saying you don't visit enough. Your niece and nephew really take to their new uncle. And the mother saying that Scott's very good with them. And Jean says, will you excuse me? So she wants to talk to Scott there. What was that about? She whispers to him. And this is an interesting little bit of characterization where she's accusing them of trying to test and see do either of them have any powers such as mind reading. So Scott admits it, okay, guilty, but it's for their own good. And Jean replies, theirs or the professor's? If you're going to be his inquisitive little agent, don't bother to hide behind excuses. So he says, you're right, I'm sorry. Now don't say that to placate me. Understand, she says, just because you came out of the womb 40 years old. And this is interesting. He replies and says, Jean, I'm 25. He was about to say 25. So again, always with Marvel's sliding timescale, it's always supposed to be roughly 7 years from when the Fantastic Four went up in the shuttle where they were bathed by cosmic rays. And so how long is it then since Cyclops was recruited as Professor X's first X-Man? But now he's only supposed to be 25. And the Beast, of course, in recent, a couple of years ago, I would say at this point, it was established that the Beast is around 30. So the oldest of the original X-Men. And Jean continues and she says, figuratively speaking, doesn't mean others around you aren't entitled to have a childhood. Maybe they are like us, but I don't want them worrying about the juggernaut. I want them worrying about homework and acne and curfews. They're innocent, Scott, she says. Don't take that away from them, not yet. So anyway, they kiss and make up there after their little tiff. And what happens next is Jean's father alerts their attention to the news on the TV. And who is it except for Graydon Creed? Now, Graydon Creed is interesting. He is the head of an anti-mutant hate group, but his parents are mutants. His parents are Mystique and Sabretooth. So he is the human child of two mutant parents. Anyway, he's banging on here about the fear of a world ruled by a self-styled master race, which has its own interests, only has its own interests at heart. Together we'll conquer that fear. My name is Graydon Creed, he says, and with your help, I will be the next president of the United States. So that is a plot line that has already been set up, that he is running for the presidency. So Scott asks the question, the real question is, can he run a campaign on hatred? And Jean responds, he wouldn't be the first. I wonder if the professor knows. And the professor does indeed know. And he's on the phone to one of his contacts in the secret mutant underground. And this is I think it's the Canadian ambassador. And he says to him, Saint Croix, he says, Creed is far more threatening, Charles. His political organization, the Friends of Humanity, is that they exist solely to fan the flames of anti-mutant hysteria. If this man claims the White House. So the professor says, believe me, old friend, I know. Louis, for years you've maintained your cell of the Mutant Underground network. Is it still in place? Will it be there for me and my students if we're forced to take drastic measures. So Saint Croix on the other end of the line asks, drastic? Charles, what are you hinting at? What are you prepared to do to stop Creed? And of course, what's going on in the background with Professor X is it's all the setup for Onslaught, the Onslaught reveal. So he's becoming much more, how will I put it, like willing to consider darker means to achieve his ends. So that's what's been going on with the Professor in the continuity to this point. And so it's hinting here that maybe he'd consider assassinating Creed. We shall see. So then we're back to the train. And we have some pretty good art here from Pascual Ferry showing the trio of mutants, in particular Gambit and Beast, dodging the various mutated humans. And Bishop suddenly gets an idea. By absorbing this one's energy, one of them seems to have developed optic blasts, I can redirect it and create a quick exit. So they're out of that carriage. Beast, you stay here, find a way to subdue the passengers. And you, and Bishop says, come hell or high water, we're going to make our way to the engine and stop the train. Okay, so that is his plan. Let's see how it goes. So they're making their way along the roof towards the engine. We'll have help. If the engineer has been relatively isolated from the contagion, he'll be unaffected, says Bishop. Big if, says Gambit, and then they arrive. And they see the engineer here in the grip of this mutated human. And now Bishop realizes, of course, in his hand, the porter, he brought the plague. Now what? So, sorry, that's not the engineer. It's the porter that brought the plague on board the train. Meanwhile, back in the carriage, Beast is working to subdue the mutated humans. But he's thinking here, there may be a way. By the way, I can't pass by this really excellent advertisement for, it doesn't actually tell you, but this is a run on Captain America. This is like, I think it's from the first issue that was, let me have a guess here. Was it issue, would I be able to remember whether it's issue 355 or something like that? Or 255 of Captain America, where Mark Waid and Ron Garney, this is excellent Ron Garney art, came on board for a kind of a new era on the character, and it was very successful at the time, but a very eye-catching ad. So let's continue with the story though. So Beast is bouncing around in the carriage and he's looking for the right ingredients to do something or other. So he's got one mutated human in his way, asking them, what do you want to do? Pick a fight, then let me have it. Perfect. Thank you kindly, underbelly access. So that's gone through the floor of the carriage, and now he's climbing along the bottom, and he's looking for brake fluid for whatever chemical concoction he's working on. That's a nice shot of Gambit there, dodging the punch of this big mutated human. So Bishop is going down for the controls, and they're shattered, he discovers. So Gambit says, well, the controls, if they're dead, are in good company because we're closing in fast to the station, and in a couple of minutes they'll be scraping us out of the tunnel with a spatula. So he tells Bishop to do something, and meanwhile we cut back to Beast, who's bouncing around with this fire extinguisher, it looks like, and what he's worked on, the chemical concoction he's worked on, seems to be a makeshift anesthetic that does its job for the most part. But not all of the mutates are dependent on normal breathing, of course, but he takes that into account. And if he seems uncharacteristically savage, it's because he's not himself. So this is another interesting element of the continuity around this issue. The X-Men are unaware that their Hank McCoy was recently replaced by a malevolent doppelganger from another timeline, or kind of like dimension, and that is the Age of Apocalypse, Dark Beast, a secretive schemer whose primary objective is to stay hidden. So all of that was detailed in X-Men Unlimited number 10. So he's thinking there, or rather he sees and observes that once relaxed, the mutated humans change back. Okay, so there may be a way to save these people. But the one person he's been trying to hide from is this one, Mr. Sinister. How disappointing, says Sinister. I'd hoped for a slightly more permanent effect. How else will I accumulate test subjects? So the whole thing was a Mr. Sinister experiment. Apparently I'll have to go elsewhere for my guinea pig, he says, but not far, of course. Let's go see who you might have brought with you. So pretty good shot of Mr. Sinister there, anchor image of Mr. Sinister by Pascual Ferry. Meanwhile, Bishop has knocked out that big mutate out of the top of the engine, and he's standing on top of the carriage, and they've got that big problem. How are they going to stop the train? Because they're coming into the station. So Gambit has a plan, and his plan, which he says is the only chance they have. Turn the page, past this ad. He says that is to load the whole engine with kinetic energy. So Bishop is aghast. He doesn't know how that's going to work. What, are you crazy? He shouts. Things were bad enough before. Now we're riding a 1,000-ton bomb straight into the heart of Manhattan. So there you go. They're en route to Penn Station. And that's our cliffhanger. That's the end of this first part of a two-part storyline, continued next issue. So pretty plot focused issue, first issue by Mark Waid. And the little scene with Scott and Jean, not too bad, but not exactly an amazing first story on the title. It's kind of pretty routine stuff. The 2 pages of letters are all focused on issue 48 of the title. Next issue. Sinister has kept genetic tabs on most of the mutants in the Marvel Universe except one, but now with Bishop as prisoner, he's about to add some dangerous information to his collection, which of course is maybe knowledge about the Age of Apocalypse universe / dimension. There you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 51. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review, please like it in YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.